All right, we're going to start by taking a look at how to make a scatter plot. So this is our first step in understanding line of best fit and coming up with equations for line of best fit. We have to make a scatter plot first. So first of all, what is a scatter plot? It's a graph of points on a coordinate grid with each axis representing one of the two variables. So we've made quite a few scatter plots in the past in class. So let's take a look at one here. And this scatter plot is representing temperature in 2019. Notice this is our x-axis, it's the horizontal axis, and our y-axis is the vertical axis. Notice they are labeled, both the x and y-axis and the title. There are points along the axes, and there is a scale that is labeled on each axis. This particular scale along the x-axis is going by twos. So the scale is 2. Even though you're seeing 10 and 20, our scale is not 10. We have to count to get to this 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So each of these lines is going up by twos. So that's why our scale is 2. However, if you look along the y-axis, our scale is very different. We have 40 and 80 on here. Now to get to 40, we have to count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40. So our scale along our y-axis is tens, all right? So just a couple of things to keep in mind, some vocabulary that you're gonna be using and hopefully getting comfortable with if you're not already, is the x-axis, that horizontal line on a coordinate grid, the y-axis, that vertical line on the coordinate grid, the scale, that numbers on that graph that make sure the data is shown accurately. If you just slap on any old number up there, it's really going to warp the graph and make it look not the way it's intended to look. An independent variable is the x variable in a set of data. So anything that is can kind of stand alone is on the x-axis. Okay, that's an independent variable. A dependent variable changes because of the other variable. It depends on the other one. And that always goes along the y-axis. All right, so if we look at this situation right here, and I've got to move my mug here so you can see it. All right, this is a baby's height. I'm covering up the title here. What I want you to do first right now is answer this first question. What is the label for the x-axis? All right, you should have labeled age in years for the x-axis. Number 2, what is the label for the y-axis? Go ahead and answer that question now. You should have answered height for the y-axis label. What is the scale for the x-axis? Go ahead and answer that question now. You should have answered the scale is 1 along the x-axis because every line is going up by 1. And then what is the scale for this y-axis here? You should have answered that the scale for the y-axis is 5 because every line is going up by 5. All right. Next, in understanding kind of the pieces of the coordinate system, we need to be able to understand it even more deeply than what we've just spent time looking at. And we need to be able to plot these points. So a couple of different things to remember. This origin is where the x and the y-axis intersect with one another. It's this point right here, okay? The y-axis is right here, x-axis is there. Here are the 4 different quadrants. This is quadrant 1. It is a positive quadrant. Everything that gets plotted in this quadrant, both the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate, are positive. Quadrant 2, the x coordinates are all negative because we're on the negative part of the x-axis, and the y values are all positive because we're on the positive part of that y-axis. Down in quadrant 3, both our x and our y coordinates are negative because we are on the negative part of the x-axis and the negative part of the y-axis. So anything you plot down here is going to have both a negative x and a negative y value. Over on this side, our last quadrant, quadrant 4, has positive x values because we're on the positive part of the x-axis, and negative y values because we're in that lower part of the y-axis, the negative portion of the y-axis. All right, let's keep looking here. So you'll notice that we are in quadrant 1 right now, that positive quadrant of our 4-quadrant grid. And we're going to plot the point 3, 4. This is our x coordinate, the first one. It's just like the alphabet, x comes before y, so the x coordinate comes first, the y coordinate comes second. So the first thing you do is you go to the x-axis and you find x is 3. You do not put a point there. You then go up to y is 4, and this right here is the point 3, 4. There is just one point, 3, 4, and it is right here on the grid. Okay. If we look at the other side here, if we look at the opposite of that, 4, 3, you'll notice it's in a completely different place. Okay. It's at x is 4 because that is our first coordinate, and y is 3. So it's across 4 and up 3. Okay, so those 2 points are very different from one another. So you really need to be careful when you're plotting those points. Okay, so if we take a look at this graph right here, we have plotted the point -2, 3. So you'll notice that that is in quadrant 2 because the first ordered pair, the x coordinate, is negative and the y coordinate is positive. So we go back on the x-axis and go up 3. And that is our point -2, 3. All right, the next point we're going to take a look at is -2, -3. Notice both the coordinates are negative, both the x and the y. So we have to be in this third quadrant. So we go back 2 along the x-axis at -2 and go down 3. And that's where we would plot that point. All right, our next point is going to be in this 4th quadrant. And notice the x value is positive, so we go right on the x-axis and then down 3 from there. So again, this is our x coordinate at 2, and then find y as -3 from there. All right, so notice again the difference between these 2 points. They are very different from one another. A lot of people make mistakes in that. Remember, this is our x coordinate, this is our y coordinate. So make sure you're using the correct parts of the axes to help you there. All right, your turn. Go ahead and locate the point 5, 7. All right, next question. You're going to locate the point 4, 0. Where is that ordered pair 4, 0? All right, next, locate the point -5, 4. Where would you find that point? Okay, we're going to start first off is where is the point -6, 3? Which of these is the point -6, 3? All right, now that you've answered that one, I want you to find the next point, 3, 6. Which of these points over here is the point 3, 6? Next point you're looking for is -6, -3. The last one you're looking for is the point 6, -3. When you're creating a scatter plot, not only do you need to know about the x and the y axis, You need to know how to plot points, but you also need to know how to set up your graph. So your first step is to look at your data and decide what scale you would use on both the X and the Y axis. So your best bet is to start by just looking at our X coordinates here. Notice that our range is from 1 to 10. So we know along our x-axis, we have to have it low enough for 1 and high enough for 10. Same thing with the y-axis. We need it low enough to get 20 on there and up to as high as 100. So we can get all of our data on that. Okay. So now that we know that, then we can set up our graph with our labels. So we're going to build a grid with our labels on it. Notice our X coordinates were all dealing with homework completed, and our Y coordinates were the test score, and that is coming from here. Okay. And we talked about how our x-axis needs to go from 1 to 10. It is actually 0 because this corner, that origin, is always 0. It always has to be. And then we said we needed to get up to at least 100. So we decided to go by 10. So it's not super hard to get there, and it's not really cramped as well. Okay, so we've now got all of our labels on there and our scale on there. The last step would be to plot those points and get those ordered pairs on there. Okay, and then we have a beautiful scatter plot. Okay, one of the things that we're going to be looking at when we're making these scatter plots is what is this graph showing us? So in general, notice kind of this upward trend in our data. The more homework this person is completing, the higher their test score is. So that's kind of what this graph is showing. The more homework we complete, the higher the test score. So they can't all be that easy. Some of them are a little bit more tricky to set up. In fact, a lot of times we assume this first value is the X value and the second value is the Y value. That's not always the case. If you look at my X and Y value ranges, you'll notice that this is actually my Y value, the sales, and this is my X values, my temperature. And that's because this is about ice cream and the sales of ice cream. And what we're noticing is, and what we're going to notice is that as the temperature increases, the sale for ice cream goes up. And that sale depends on the temperature outside. Not many people go and buy ice cream on rainy days like I did with my kids the other day. We were just all craving ice cream. So anyway, so this is the dependent or the Y value. And you'll notice those Y values range from 250 to 475. So there's a big range there. There's some large numbers. So it's a little trickier to figure out how we're going to set that up. Same with the temperature. We're starting at 68 and going to 93. We're not even considering any of the Minnesota weather type temperatures earlier in the year. So let's take a look at how we're going to then set up this graph. All right, let me move my mug so you can see things a little better. All right, so here's how we decided to build this graph. Notice my Z in the corner. Okay, I have to have that because I'm not starting at 0. Okay, notice I chose a scale of going from 65 to 95 by 5s, so it could still be pretty spread out. And there's no values before 65, so there's no point in me putting them on there. It's just going to make a big blank area in my graph. Same with the 250 to 500. Okay, I don't need that big blank area underneath. So we put this break symbol in there to show that, hey, we're just going to start here just so we don't have a big blank area. Okay, notice the labels. Then our next step would be then to plot those points. And I've already kind of told you what this graph is showing. We talked about that a little bit. As the temperature increases, the sale for ice cream is increasing. All right, now it's your turn to show me what you have learned throughout this video. Remember, you can go back and rewind as much as you want and relook at things however you need. Use this data and a piece of graph paper. Please do not just use plain regular paper, use graph paper, and create your own scatter plot and submit it into the assignment that comes after this video. All right, bye.